Our clan is called JSC75. It is a specific branch of the Illuminati clan. The 300 richest people, they can pay anyone and say, create a virus. You can make one call to the same superhero and say, make it so that every second news item has a certain image, and a person starts to be zombified. The Freemasons are more influential. They can make one call, and for example, a TV channel gets shut down. Yes, for some reason. Regarding demonic things, yes, there are. It is necessary to know all of this, but it is prohibited. There are some branches that are more directly involved in black magic. Politics is a pawn. A senator can envy a bakery, ask someone what to do, because there may be a clan at the top.
He knows techniques through which natural disasters and epidemics are created. Souls are transplanted into other bodies, and thoughts are implanted in people's minds. His clan predicted that Facebook would be a profitable project even before its creation. He knows everything about the inner workings of secret clans and has managed to retain kindness, warmth, and sincerity within himself. Ernst Veter is a man who has mastered telekinesis, pyrokinesis, levitation, healing, mental time travel, astral communication, and many other abilities that you will learn about in this episode. We have been looking for a long time for someone who truly possesses these abilities, rather than just playing for the camera. Once, Ernst dreamed of learning these abilities himself, but he only succeeded after joining a closed branch of the Illuminati. Now he shares this knowledge outside of all egregores and clans, explaining how to develop these abilities within oneself, how to grow and become truly powerful in this reality, to become a superhero in real time.
Ernst, please tell us what abilities you possess. List them and briefly explain to our viewers what they are.
I possess the abilities that my teacher gave me. These are telekinesis and levitation. And over time, I developed a couple more abilities in SID. This includes the ability of healing. It is the ability to move through time, but only mentally. This is the ability of pyrokinesis. I will say right away, my teacher did not teach me telekinesis. I learned that myself. Well, and minor abilities, so to speak. For example, accessing the necessary egregore, communicating in the astral, if that is considered an ability. Well, it seems to me that all of this is, in one pile. That is, when you reach a certain level, new knowledge begins to open up to you automatically. That is, you don't really think about them, they come over time, but again, it's all nourishments from certain egregores. And for a person who embarks on the path of learning, who wants to develop, they suddenly start receiving new knowledge from somewhere over time. There is a saying that a person can only invent what they know. But when a person starts engaging in super abilities, new knowledge opens up to them that they never even imagined.
So he reads them from the flow, right?
He reads them from the flow. He knows how to connect to the right egregores. That is, for some things, some courses I created, I would just sit down, I had an idea, I want to write a course. I would just ask the universe how to do it. And after a couple of days, the right egregore would contact me, and I would start receiving a flow of images that I then had to transform into our human words and thoughts. Well, that is, a person begins to feel, and this language of the universe, one needs to be able to sense it. It is inaudible. It is invisible. It only works on sensations. Therefore, a true esoteric is one who knows how to feel themselves. So this language is more tangible, more, let's say, tactile, rather than auditory.
Let's talk more about egregores. So, this is telekinesis, pyrokinesis, levitation. As far as I know, teleportation is also on the list.
I actually always tried to push teleportation a bit to the background because I know teleportation in two variants, teleportation of a person and teleportation of an object, but I have always been afraid of teleporting a person. I have developed object teleportation within myself, and I teach it to other people. At least, I have taught a few students. One had such one-time flashes, while the other can really do it, let's say, intentionally. But I am afraid of teleporting a person. I saw a person teleport, it was my teacher. And he teleported about 100 to 200 meters. But this disintegration and reassembly at another point has always been a moment of utmost concentration for me. If a person loses concentration during levitation for some reason, they will just fall to the ground. Well, let's say they jumped poorly off a stove. But if a person loses concentration during teleportation, they may simply not reassemble. The physical body will reassemble, but the mental bodies can destroy absolutely everything. That's why it's like climbing high voltage wires and trying to do some installation without knowing anything at all. It's very dangerous. I would impose a huge ban on such things, but nevertheless, people are interested, they want it. People want everything unknown. They want to delve into it and understand. Well, okay, let's take it step by step.
Yes, we will talk in detail about each super ability today. But for now, I want to know where you learned all this. And which one will you demonstrate today? Let's do it this way.
Well, let's do it this way. Today I will demonstrate something easy, just to see the reaction of people, how they will react to it. And if there is a good reaction, a good response, then in our next video, if it happens, I will demonstrate more. Today I will demonstrate light telekinesis. I will show how the shield of the object's field works. What is the shield of the field? Because in reality, many people see, super abilities as just the tip of the iceberg. The colossal preparation that is needed is what is underwater. And people often do not pay attention to this, saying, we want exactly this. And indeed, when a person comes to a course, they take just the very tip and say, I will hit there. You need to build the base of the iceberg, because that is the most important. For example, the shield of the field is one of the most fundamental, basic knowledge that you need to develop for yourself from start to finish. Many people skip over it. Well, I will show it. I will show it today, so I think everyone will understand it.
Okay, where did you learn all this? Where do these knowledge come from?
I learned completely by chance. I met my teacher also completely by chance. Well, probably those who may know me have seen my videos where I talk about my teacher. I met him in America. I was in America on a tourist visa, and my language was poor, but nevertheless, I was no longer shy to talk to people. For me, it was, some kind of challenge to talk to people. Well, again, briefly this story, perhaps people have heard it. There was just a man standing and looking at some old house. Moreover, he was already an old man, very interesting, always in a hat, but he was very beautiful. And he just emanated incredible energy. It was like you were drawn to him. And I just approached him, and I just wanted to, I don't know why, but surely these souls are just drawn to each other. I just approached and asked why he was looking at this building. He told me that it emanates very bad energy. And I lived just 2 blocks away. My hotel was located there. And I was already leaving. I talked to him. That building emanates very bad energy. It's just a building that is boarded up, the doors are boarded, the windows are boarded, and literally a couple of days later, there were about 20 police cars taking people out with their hands twisted behind their backs. It turns out there was some kind of chemical laboratory underneath. They were doing something there, some banned substances, and I met him literally a couple of days later, and I asked him how he found out about it. He said, I can feel it. I just have this, desire. How can you feel it? Although, let's say, I had urges for this. Often. When I was still a child, I had certain urges that I could really read this too. I could do it. But over time, work, home, and it all kind of faded away. And then I just connected with him. We met. His name was Arne. But he probably knew that I would approach him because he was already set to take me in. And we started communicating. My stay in America all came down to the fact that I was just with him. First of all, my level of English improved a bit. Secondly, I wasn't watching anything anymore. I was just communicating with him. Later I left, and then we started meeting. At first, for example, we exchanged letters. Then I often visited him, and he taught me all of this. And then I just started to follow him. In the literal sense, to follow. And in the last years of his life I was constantly with him, so I believe I fulfilled my duty to him. That is, the person who helped him was me. Probably, when a person is already on their deathbed and someone is nearby, they truly feel that duty. Attachment, he transmits a huge amount of energy to him. I think I received it after all, because especially after his death, I began to develop very strong abilities. And plus, my teacher allowed me to bring this to the masses. Before that, it wasn't the case. He had students one-on-one. I never even communicate with anyone about this over the phone. That is, a person comes, and I tell them, no phones, so I can see that there is one person on the other end. And he allowed me to bring this to the masses. Right before the end, he said that basically, if you want, we can do it, but it will be very difficult. Those were his words. It will be difficult. And now I can clearly see all the obstacles, how people are trying to protest against us, how people, are going against this.
You talk a lot about your teacher, but I am currently interested in a slightly different question. As far as I know, you are part of some closed clans, and I would like to hear about that.
Everyone wants to hear about this. Well, okay, today we will slightly lift the veil, because I actually clarified. I can at least share the name. Our clan is called JC75. 75 is the code number. JC is the abbreviation. This is a specific branch of the Illuminati clan. It has existed, if I'm not mistaken, since around 1880, excluding 880. How much do people know the difference between what are clans in general? Let's briefly explain what clans are. A clan is a society. In the past, there was no Facebook, there was no Instagram. and foolish minds thought they lived in their own world and everything was fine. But the minds tried to somehow gather into communities and began to organize certain societies. And the Freemasons were the first community that really started to gather intelligent people around them. But the idea of Freemasonry is that there must be religion. In the idea of the Illuminati, religion is absent. Development comes first, intelligence comes first, everything else is unnecessary. That is, enlightenment. In the beginning, basically as I was told, in the 1770s, 80s, when all this Illuminati began to emerge, there was no occultism in it. Now it is indeed occultism. But, again, if the Illuminati is still going more or less smoothly, that is, without any connections to foreign forces, connections to some demons and the like, then our branch, at least our branches, because the clan is already the 75th, so there are actually many of them in America and Europe. They are still specifically working on the anti-religious direction. Secondly, they have a very strong focus on superpowers, working with otherworldly realms and a very strong influence through egregores. That is, if, say, in the Delimitate there is no such connection to egregores, then for us, for example, this was basically even the main exam. For the exam, you need to enter and connect to an egregore, at least to some insignificant egregore. That is, well, there will be certain techniques, and you need to do this.
Please tell me more specifically about your clan. Because firstly, everyone in society has the opinion that Freemasons, Illuminati, it doesn't matter. People know little about the specific names of clans and what they do, but there is a general established opinion that this is all black evil, murder, black magic, and everything is very terrible. I'm curious what you have to say about this, whether it's true or not. And tell me specifically about your clan, because I know that it is quite unusual for you. That is, this is a special clan for superpowers. Am I understanding correctly?
Yes. Look, actually regarding the murders, about what you say, that Freemasons drink blood, maybe that was somewhere at some time. That is, in fact, the army is also created to serve and protect the people, right? But there are also idiots in the army who beat up people at night. It's unclear why. Surely something happened somewhere. In fact, the idea of all these brotherhoods does not carry any violence, but it does carry certain powers that a person must obey. That is, imagine, for example, 300 of the richest people gathered in some glade and saying, well, let's do this and that. If they have a tool, and the tool is money, and ordinary people want money, then naturally they can do anything. They can pay anyone and say, for example, create a virus, and then create a vaccine, and then make people afraid. That is, when you have media at your fingertips, when you can make one call to the same super derp and say, make it so that, for example, every fifth person sees some scary image about the crown, naturally, people can be intimidated when you have some kind of media tool or something similar in your hands. But in fact, I wouldn't say that these clans bring any real evil. At least ours definitely does not. I remember how I was told, and my teacher Arnie and other people who work there, they say, well, by the way, they work. Yes, there are many people who work there. They, for example, say that there were many tasks related to managing people, managing some masses. But again, if, for example, the Freemasons do this with the help of money, meaning there is some huge payment for this news, and every second piece of news comes with a certain image, and a person starts to be zombified, then in our case, it works a little differently. In our case, for example, we can manage, well, at least some can manage the course of events, the flow of circumstances, and the outcome of certain decisions. That is, they set a certain direction. For example, I can say that my teacher once made the stock price rise. So what is the price? It is what a person is willing to pay. For example, roughly speaking, Bitcoin is falling and ideally everyone should sell it. But he made people buy it at that moment, paying for stocks, and the price again rose. That is, well, there were some crazy amounts, but again, my teacher, he actually was always, modest about money. He never really clung to money, so I don't know how much he earned. He never talked about his fees. And he poured all his money away. Moreover, he poured it into some help, into some funds. I never saw any money from him. Honestly, it turned out that he was poor. Although once I saw his fee, it was a 5-digit amount in dollars. So, then, where did that money go? To be honest, I didn't understand.
Well, look, and this story about how cataclysms are created due to, well, more precisely how it sounds is that the Freemasons created another flood, right? Or something like that. Is it true?
Well, look, there is a practice called the dawn of the earth. This is when you can tune into the vibrations of the earth. This is the so-called Schumann resonance. And, in principle, by working with it, you can achieve very strong visualization and set certain, well, that is, you need to know geodesy inside and out. For example, what is a flood? It's some kind of earthquake, right? Somewhere underwater. That is, you need to visually make two plates collide, change their direction, increase the speed, one running into the other, or, for example, summon some kind of cyclone. It works, but let's say I only once heard in passing that we had one person who did something like that. And it was something minor. It was about clearing the weather. There was some weather, and the president was coming to that state. They needed it to be clear because he was supposed to give a speech. That's what I heard. I won't lie, I won't say who it was because I only heard it in passing. There were discussions, and he needed to create good weather. But again, I heard, for example, that in Moscow on May 9th, they disperse clouds with airplanes. That is, it can be done physically, but he specifically made it so that there would be good weather on those 2 days. Honestly, I won't.
Look, this is your clan, for example. First of all, I know that you can't know very high positions. What's going on there? Secondly, as I said, this is your clan, for example. They don't engage in such things. So, am I correct in understanding that some others can indeed cause cataclysms, epidemics, wars, and so on?
Alina, look, if you imagine our clan as a ship, then I am a cabin boy on the ship, washing ampules. No joke. That is, my knowledge is very small compared to what the people there have. Someday I might still rise. That is, in principle, I am still young, and perhaps someday I will be promoted in rank there. So, this was also part of our plan. But, as far as I know, this is not predominant, so surely other JC clans also do this, and perhaps they even do it stronger. But, it requires digging through archives, it requires digging through some orders, and there is also a very high level of clearance for this. That is, if it's not yours, you won't find out about it in any way. So, a person could be your best friend, and they won't tell you this. You need to understand that it's not all like, your friends, and he will tell you this while drunk. First of all, these are people who are not related to any side of drinking parties at all. That is, for them, there are no such gatherings, and they are very good at keeping their mouths shut. He, I don't know, can work wonders, but works, I don't know, in a store fixing shoes. Moreover, this happens very often with them. What is this related to? I suppose this is probably related to not drawing attention, especially. Because if this person is in some huge financial position and does nothing, they may attract attention. This clan does not cooperate with the government. If some financial structures start to pay attention to where you are getting huge amounts of money in your account while you are basically doing nothing, they try to minimize this somehow so that the person is not noticeable. But at the same time, he has privileges. That is, if he wants to do something, it just happens for him. There are calls made, not to the top level, but to help the person, and that's how it goes.
So you mean that an ordinary, as you say, shoe seller can be at the top of your clan's hierarchy? Well, conditionally.
Absolutely right, absolutely right. Well, let's say no. The one who, for example, in our group at Vishpushka has a small company. As far as I know, there are about 50 people. He is involved in IT, well, some light IT, telephony. He is somehow connected with IT&T, but he is also not a millionaire. So regarding his company, he has a small firm there. But this is, a kind of cover. And in reality, again, what is important for him? There are not always people there, just so you understand. People come when there is some kind of gathering. So there is a meeting, everyone comes, but otherwise, for example, if you enter this building, it is a 2-story building located in the center of Solfleg. And you wouldn't even realize that you think it's some kind of library or archive. Only when they hold some meetings do they immediately reserve huge halls nearby, sports halls, which suddenly get transformed into a hall for meetings, with all those basketball courts and everything like that. So, basically, I think these people have power. But again, you see, I've recently stopped taking an active part, so I have probably distanced myself a bit from them, so to speak.
As far as I know, you are in the middle of this hierarchy. So you have the 7th level, as I remember, or whatever it can be called, yes? Out of 13. I wouldn't say that this is a junior.
No, there is nothing by level there. Levels are achieved by certain figures. So you have to show a certain figure you have. And specifically your tasks that they give you. For example, I had a task recently a couple of years ago. I needed to read certain lectures on Siths, for example. On the same suggestion, how to do telepathy correctly, how to do suggestion correctly, and I had such a task. I sat and read for 3 days. I did it for new groups every 2 hours because, in principle, large groups are also not allowed there. The group there is 20 people. You have to work with them. You have to communicate with them. There is a translator, a synchronist, the levels, are not quite. If I said that I am a junior on the ship, I meant more how I feel about my knowledge. Because there are such people, there are young people, 20-year-olds, who put their hands on the table, lift them, and leave imprints. So he has more superpowers. But again, you need to work towards this. You know, everything you train, everything you pursue to the end, sooner or later pays off. If you stray a little from this path, it cools down a bit. Well, yes, you are right, yes. There are levels. And this person, who is really a boss in our terms, yes, he is indeed at level 13. So, well, this person, when you communicate with him, he can shake your hand. At that moment, he can assess the information you have, what problem you currently have, and solve it right with that handshake. So you come in in a depressed state, you shook his hand, greeted him, and that's it. You already go. Everything is resolved for you. All the circumstances have changed. Well, this is also a kind of sequel.
Okay. What are these clans created for? I still want to dispel the myth that closed clans are something terrible, that there is murder, these cataclysms, they are all against us. It's unclear what they want. What is the purpose of your clan, for example, and what are other clans created for?
What is the purpose of the clan? Probably to strengthen, develop, and multiply this knowledge, because it was, in principle, discovered quite accidentally, as I understand, and the one who took them began to fight for them, began, so to speak, to protect them. And I think, my assumption is, as I currently suppose, that when Arne met me, he already knew in advance that he would meet me. That is, usually, they do not let people in there. That is, a person must have certain assumptions. By the link, he must already be, so to speak, mentally prepared for this, and have certain qualities. That is, I think it was basically not planned for me to approach him and so on. They recruit people who can carry. So you see, the very idea of the clan is not focused on the individual, but rather on the type. That is, the type that carries this knowledge. And one person leaves, another comes, this knowledge must prevail. So I understand that this is essentially the idea of some egregore, because on human levels we still stop. Because, for example, I don't see people who, for instance, introduce their children or grandchildren there. There is no such, ancestral hierarchy. It doesn't exist. Like, for example, with the Freemasons. The Freemasons, for instance, pass on their money. They have the same Rothschilds, fillers. They don't mix. They constantly live in their own swamp. It would be bad if we mixed and gave up the reins. On the contrary, we don't have that. We should remain ourselves. But we have very strict rules for the project. So if a person starts to disclose a lot, again, what I'm saying now is not disclosure. Disclosure would be if I start mentioning names, start talking about where we have some hideouts, bets, and so on. That is already disclosure. For that, I could really get in trouble. I clarified whether I had the right to name the title, well, because the title isn't really mentioned anywhere, so I made a breach and asked if I could say GST 75 from the spell. You can say it, no problem. But, for example, if a person starts chatting somewhere, then of course they tighten the screws on him.
Look, I also know that when something is needed from super abilities, in the realm of super abilities, it is precisely these Masons, Illuminati, and so on who turn to your clan because they don't have such super abilities. Right.
Well, let's put it this way. How? No, that's a bit of an exaggeration. Some Masons have super abilities. You see, how to put it, the clan doesn't have super abilities. There are still people in the clan. Some have them, some don't. Well, let's say, to be honest, I once communicated, I was at one meeting, it was a Masonic lodge. I really didn't like these people. They were, somewhat self-absorbed. There's something about them, like that. They really carry this bulging chest forward, some kind of energy. In fact, it's a fabricated energy. I think the Illuminati are more there. That is, if our branch indeed came from the clan of the Illuminati. Therefore, there was already a focus on spiritual development, mental development, and energy development. I know that Freemasons, again, are certain people. It's not the whole clan. These 200 people in tuxedos don't just come to you, right? And a certain person calls saying, there's a need for this, this, and this. Can you do this? It is brought up for discussion. An order is given. Then the one who can do this gets in touch, contacts, a price is set, because it's still not free. Let's say the prices are quite significant. And the person does this? Well, again, I will honestly say, what I have seen with us and what I saw at one such Freemason meeting is just night and day. We simply have people, they select talented individuals. Let's put it this way. Those who can do something, plus we have teaching. That is, there is constant training. Well, of course, water does not flow under a lying stone. If a person only boasts about their money and connections, it will remain at that level. That is, again, Freemasons are more influential. They can make one call and, for example, a TV channel gets shut down for some reason. We don't have that. We can launch one thought and something happens there. It's kind of different. But again, it all follows protocol. That is, you don't have the right to just do it. And so, let's say if a person has such abilities and does this, they can still be tracked down. That is, by a certain energetic trace, one can determine who did it. Therefore, we don't have situations where a person sits there all evening and, witch, do your magic. So, it's more strict here. Everything is prohibited.
Okay, there is an opinion that all these clans, all, not all, well, again, yes, this presence exists. That they are somehow connected with some dark demonic beings, black magic and so on. And I will even tell you more. Friends and acquaintances who have encountered this have come to me. And by the way, names were mentioned that I am supposedly an Illuminati. Maybe all of this is also, well, untrue, right? A person can say anything. But I have heard such stories directly from people close to me, that some terrible things were happening there and some, I don't even know how to call it, well, mantras to some demonic beings, the horror that then happened to people. Well, in general, it's quite a story.
Well, look, I will tell you how it is. Again, I am not delving into the technique. For example, I will tell you, the Illuminati have a very specific technique for transferring a soul into another body. It is a very harsh technique. And there is a second technique, which is to leave a legacy for oneself. That is, to leave a legacy for oneself and then transfer it to oneself. There is a specific technique. If anyone is interested, I can explain this. Regarding demonic things, yes, there are. Our clan is trying to move away from that. That is, for example, all these elements of black magic, where you really go into the lower level and start working with them, we are trying to move away from that. It sometimes still exists. Sometimes, for example, we have had requests when it was necessary to remove black magic. Actually, if you are, for example, afraid of this black magic, oh dear, God forbid, black magic, then how will you work with it? It's like a person who is afraid of blood. How will they be a surgeon? It's impossible. Therefore, you need to know all of this. But it is forbidden. Surely, there are some branches that deal more directly with black magic. We do not have that. I won't say that we directly relate to this. That is, all these devaluations that I know occur, that is really dark stuff, we do not have that. But most likely, the Illuminati are more suited to this. Why? Because look, our strength lies precisely in super abilities. We really can demonstrate any super abilities that a person wants. The connection with a demon specifically enhances some super ability for a short time. That is, the same levitation is also possible if you, for example, know how to connect to some satanic rituals. You can be lifted up for a short time. You can see like float. But the backlash will be so crazy later that this levitation will cost you such treatment. I experienced this firsthand during one ritual when I was still young. I realized that it's better not to get involved in these matters, but again, I wash my hands of it. We don't have this in our clan. In neighboring clans, most likely not in GSC clans, but specifically in the Illuminati clan. In one of them, it surely exists. Because they also resort to some super abilities, but since they don't know them, it's easier to go through black magic. But in black magic, you open such a portal of dark energy, which can then spill out onto the practitioner. That is, those who work in black magic must know how to defend themselves. There is direct protection, there are entire protection rituals.
However, as I understand it, many people use this. As far as I know, many pop stars. I don't know if they are connected with some clans or if they individually form contracts with demons, but it seems to be everywhere.
Well, look, let's just analyze this example. The same rap singers, right? Some performers and some rock musicians, especially rock musicians. How does this even happen? When is it better? What are Freemasons anyway? Freemasons should understand that it was originally a certain clan of smart people. Then they realized that power is in money and they started to recruit. Just as a person starts to gain some momentum. That is, for example, the same singer came out from the ranks of stars somewhere from Russia. He is not needed by anyone. He has already risen a bit, started earning well, and certain clans begin to take notice of him. They start inviting him. At first, just invitations, conversations. If he agrees, he is brought down, and there they tell him accordingly, you do this for a long-term deduction. There are real deductions. That is, they pay well. No matter how they say that everything is free, there is a very large deduction. Once he has done that, he already has the right to something. For example, he says, I want the same singer. For example, he experiences a bit of a decline in his creativity. And we all know very well that creativity can be easily drawn from this dark mass. That is, right there with this. That is, art comes directly from there. If he draws from it, he will create just like a magician. But he himself will not go there, and therefore, since he is there, he already knows who to talk to, he is introduced to certain people, they start making some requests, arranging meetings with other people, and they are brought together. I am sure that all these singers who demonstrate the same Masonic signs do not know anything themselves. But they know people who help them. Because if you are not in the clan, you won't get help. No matter how much you ask, you will be there dying, begging these people, they won't help you, you need to be wealthy in this clan. Or somehow approach him so that people from this clan talk about you, well, honestly, regarding all the satanic rituals, I actually feel very sorry if people resort to them. Because again, we know that our soul is immortal, and what you did in this life is for something, where you will have to work it off karmically in the next lives. Moreover, this can be a multiple working off not just in the next one, but in many subsequent incarnations. Or it is worth it. Each person decides for themselves.
I agree with you. But for some reason this does not hinder anyone because it seems to me that this topic is thriving among many famous people, among many influential ones, among the authorities. By the way, regarding the authorities, I heard that there is an opinion, especially in America, that, how to put it, politicians do not decide anything, that everything is decided exclusively by clans, that at the top of the clan someone says something while the politician is not at the top but somewhere at the bottom and he just listens to all of this. Is it true?
Unfortunately, yes. But again, look, if we look at the structure of the American state itself, then the state itself as a state, it does not have any financial resources. That is, the resources are external. They can only redirect them. And in order to have, let's say, any influence, they really have to listen to the powerful worlds. That is, politicians are pawns who come and go. No, there are certain politicians who have reincarnations, who have already been in politics a couple of times. But mostly, these are indeed the people who listen very closely to the opinions of all the clans. That is, there it is just. He talked, then goes out, immediately takes out his phone and starts calling. We decided what to do next. And there are indeed direct calls happening. Moreover, again, this call could be from some senator calling a bakery to ask someone what to do. Because that person might be at the top of the clan. So this is real. It works. But again, because it is managed by huge financial resources, that is, if let's say the same clan really works with finances and knows what can be given, that is, where one can call, then yes, in fact, this is true. This is true, and unfortunately, it is so. If it all goes for the good, what difference does it make? If it goes against the people, like for example the same idea with the pandemic, then of course it is sad.
Yes, that's exactly what I wanted to say. That is, what is considered for the good. After all, everyone may have different opinions here. Probably the clan's opinion is that causing some kind of flood or pandemic is quite good. It helps to control people, to herd them together, and so on.
Look, let's consider a simple example. For instance, there are about 100 farmers living somewhere in Oklahoma, each with 500,000 frames or maybe 500 there. Hectares of land, and people came to them saying, we want to build a shopping center here. They said, no, this is our land, we won't do anything here. They turned to those who can create some floods for 3 to 4 years in a row so that they have constant natural disasters. And eventually they sell it. Then they build some kind of, I don't know, either a city-forming factory or some huge center there. And then people start to come. After 20-30 years, no one remembers those 5 farmers, and everyone is already happy there. So what is for the good? If we look at a specific individual, yes. But if we look at the overall picture, then we must think in centuries, not just like this, today someone is feeling bad. Well, yes, someone is feeling bad, but here you need to understand how you think. Do you think like a human? Or do you think like a god that is immediately in such a long way? Therefore, such a question of ethics, what is truly good, and what is, for one person it can be terrible, for another person it can be good. The same, for example, if you look at Europe, for instance, Germany, France, there this border goes like this. One side took, the other side took, one side took the other. Border territory. No one is complaining now. Basically, very often in the world this happens, where there is a fight for border territories. At the moment, this is a conflict. In 500, 600 years, well, it belonged to those, this becomes history. Here it's a situation that cannot be discussed at this moment. One must always look at a certain period of time.
You see, for example, even what you say, that wastelands, yes, or some piece of land are washed away by floods, and then, instead of land, shopping centers are built there. And in fact, we are destroying our planet, which, of course, to some extent...
Exactly with these resources, yes. But again, you see, if we haven't reached a critical level yet, I think a restoration plan is already emerging somewhere. That is, if we look, there was an interesting book called The Golden Billion, which had a plan for the destruction of a certain number of humanity. Is it true? Partly yes, but it didn't work. It didn't work as intended. But they do have other tools, they have other controls, they have the same other... My God, do you know why there is so much of the same pornography on the internet? Can't anyone stop it? Well, because it, so to speak, halts the normal evolution of humanity. It provides control tools. It causes, so to speak, a birth rate failure. That is, say, 10, 20, 30 major internet providers could ban all these porn sites in 15 minutes. It would all be shut down. Apparently no one needs this, that is, it should be kept under control. Whether it is kept in balance is another question. Well, let's say yes, this is a controversial point. I think when we reach some critical point, a recovery plan will be developed very quickly. Plus, this constant global warming, the shifting of the poles, that is, the poles are moving, where it will be warm in 200 to 300 years, where it will be hot, possibly Africa. Right now, Africa is being heavily bought up by Europeans and Americans. It is being bought up very heavily, with tens of thousands of hectares being purchased by individuals. Most likely, some information has already circulated that there, through, again, they think in millennia, not millennia, but centuries, not in today's terms. That is, naturally, neither he will live there, nor his son, nor his grandson, but his great-grandchildren may already own something there. They will already be keeping an eye on that territory.
Yes, and perhaps it won't be the great-grandson, but the same soul, right? As we have already established, they can transplant this soul. Here I became curious. Maybe you can name some names. You say that some presidents have reincarnated in this way. Maybe we can provide some kind of clue?
Look, I know for sure that it happened in the Rothschild clan. It was done a couple of times.
This is the transplantation of a soul into another body, right?
This is not the transplantation of a soul. It is, when a person is already on their deathbed, a very strong person comes, who can guide and clearly say where this soul will be born. He is born, well, naturally, the child grows. And then at a certain age, something happens to him. He undergoes a very strong hypnosis, in which the knowledge of the previous life opens up. That is, he just goes bam, and he starts to remember what happened. Imagine a child is born who knows who he was in his past life. It would be just amazing. That is, he brings all the knowledge with him. There are such mechanisms, but they are very, very secretive, and they cost a fortune. There are only about 5 to 6 people on the planet who do this. And this is done according to such kilogram protocols. How much is allowed, how much is not, because it really requires skill. It is the same person who does it. So essentially, this person should be about 40 years old so that he has time to reach his 17, 18 years and live, because it must be done by him. That is, he must guide this soul and meet it there so that it is already, well, about 15 years old. Well, it is not allowed to unveil this memory before 15 years. But it works, yes, it works later, but only these wealthiest clans do this. I don't know about presidents, honestly. I haven't heard that there will be presidents directly. You know, like, well, where are such presidents who are very, very bad? Well, that's North Korea. Well, I don't think there is such a thing there. It seems to me that they are already grabbing enough. But I can't tell you about presidents around the world. Perhaps there is none for the first man.
That there is such a topic about implanting other souls into Chuji bodies. It's not even about what you're saying. I don't think it's that secret ritual. I know that a lot of such implantations are done through the same ayahuasca, meaning those who use it as black magic. I'm sure there are some other rituals. Is that also true?
Do you have such information? There are very shamanic rituals in which this is kind of cloned to souls. That is, the soul is cloned, and a person kind of... You see, again, he needs to be able to overcome the consciousness of another person. That is, he must somehow destroy their soul and settle there. So it results in a kind of split. This person dies with their old soul and continues to live with a young one. There is also such a ritual, yes. To be honest, I have never participated in these rituals. I only know about them, just a little bit, and I probably wouldn't want to. But they exist, yes. Well, mainly it's very advanced. In terms of shamanism, it was very advanced in Africa. They have such a clan. There are some small clans, about 20 people, something like that. And in their case, there might be a shaman who dies and transfers his soul. And because otherwise, how will they get this information? You see, they don't write anything down anywhere, so all the information is in his head. Suddenly, poof, a new shaman is born. Well, that is, it's really just a transfer so that the information doesn't get lost.
Listen, if they use this purely for their shamanic purposes among their tribes, I see that a huge number of people, well, in Russia, yes, I see that people are starting to share this experience, that I encountered this or my acquaintance encountered that. When all this comes out, cleanses for years or somehow returns the soul. Well, in general, it's just horrifying.
Perhaps, well, I'll say this. It exists, yes, but it's complicated and you need to approach it. And well, I'm such a Sith, honestly, I don't know, so I won't talk much about it. I can ask around, I can learn.
Can you or your clan work in the other direction? That is, if a person has experienced something like that, they came back from some kind of possession, well, I'm just saying conditionally, and on the contrary, return the soul, extract that possessor. Does your clan work with that? Does your clan deal with such things?
Such things work, but you see, it's like this. Look, you must clearly distinguish what possession is, what the soul is, and what the energy of the entity within you is. That is, if, for example, a person looks and scans the field of another person and sees that there is, for example, some dark entity, the same kind of spirit, or, roughly speaking, a demon possessing and manipulating that person. That's one thing, but if he sees, that is, in a person's field, if there are two souls, he will have a split biofield. That is, it will be like a willow. They will truly fight among themselves. It will be such a struggle, and the person will really start to go insane. Return, yes, probably that's possible, but again, what to do with this soul? It either needs to be killed or sent back. In theory, it needs to be returned to the person that is, these are complex elements, and probably, this is the case, probably. I can clarify, but I have never been interested in such questions, so if needed, I can. That is, I always have a connection with people, I can talk to them, ask, is there such a thing? Yes, no, no.
Let's do this. If our viewers are interested, please write about it in the comments and we will clarify. Interested in talking about how you got into your clan. To summarize, again, what is happening there? That is, I see you, your clan, as keepers of knowledge about superpowers, right?
Yes, that's absolutely correct.
You say it's not easy to get in, they don't just take anyone. How did you get in?
Well, again, I don't know. I was lucky. I was lucky through my teacher. If I had tried to get in by myself, I would probably have been knocking my head against the door for a long time, and they wouldn't have let me in. My teacher just asked me if I had the desire to advance in this field. This was about 5 to 6 years after we started, when we had already met. And he asked me, Ernst, do you even have the desire to continue in this direction? If you do, then you need to join a clan. He took care of things for me. I won't say they took me right away. I mean, he talked on my behalf. He asked a couple of times. There were refusals. Then there was an exam. But the exam was very basic. It was an exam specifically on, I read a book, a closed book. That is, they gave me a person, opened. It was a very intense concentration. The person opened the book, read one word, and thought about that word. I needed to take him by the hands and pull that word out of his head. The exam lasts for 10 minutes. Well, it was just 10 minutes. You had to think about what he thought, which word he read, and find that word in the book. That is, open it right away and find it. 10 minutes. But after that, I was just exhausted. And I mean, for 2 days, so much energy was spent that it was hard. It was as if I had unloaded 10 wagons of coal. And I was accepted for. Again, when you are accepted, you are given very limited access. At the first level, your access is very small. You are there. There, you help organize various meetings, you assist in gathering guests, you send out all these things. Then, you are allowed to stand at the doors and just listen to what the powerful people of the world are talking about. Then, you can participate in development, you can take part in lessons. But again, there are such numbers that if they do not pass information to you, then you will not get much from it. So, when you reach the third level, you are really starting to be accepted. Some serious training there.
When you are allowed into the library, as I understand it, which is the main one at the third level, right?
At the third level, yes, you already have the right to read the library, you have the right to browse through the card catalogs, you can already peek at something there. But again, if they see that you are really digging, they immediately become suspicious. And why are you digging? I mean digging into some matters. For example, what happened? Who did what? And you really start to dig. But why? What is it? That is, every time you go to look, everything is there, everything is on paper. So you first make a request, and in the library, Google brings some archive based on your request, and you start looking at it. And then they ask you, why did you look at this archive?
And what is there, I wonder, that is, what is it all about? What knowledge about the structure of the world, about superpowers, about true history, I don't know, about the soul, about energies, about what? Or about all of this?
A lot has died out. A lot about superpowers. And their main idea is, that is, how this plan was formed. It was the ability to work with egregores, because the information before and even now is basically limited. There is nowhere to draw this information from. And the main idea, as I understand it, is that the first volumes were based precisely on how to properly draw information from egregores, how to adapt to them, how to reach the right frequency, how to receive information, process it. Well then, for example, they describe certain things that happened to you. Mainly in this, if I'm talking about the card index, who did what. That is, for example, everything, the same when he did it, is written about him, did it at such and such time, this and that. The second book, there are prices, orders, that is, this is not given to you anymore. If there is already, I think, level 10 or 11, then you can really read who the client was. That is, there is just a number, such and such an order. Such an archive, this is such access, you go there, you are level 7, you cannot, that's it. But in fact, there is really a lot of information from the old world order, when people were exactly, that is, they kind of analyzed how people thought, how people developed. After all, look, in essence, very often, for example, they write there, guys, this is all nonsense, this is all the laws of physics. The laws of physics have existed in a more established form for 300, 400 years. That is, before that, people thought differently. In 300, in 500 years, our laws of physics will seem to our great-great-grandchildren like funny laws. They will understand, they will delve much deeper into the same quantum mechanics, they will understand the structure of the world much more. That is, they will understand it much better. And what we are showing now without explanation will be explained in 500, 600 years. It's like, for example, the same thing, some dimension. That is, we, for example, live in the third dimension, and this is just a projection of the fourth dimension. And the second dimension is a projection of the third dimension. That is, we are currently in this projection, and somewhere above there is this dimension that will really explain all of this to us, how it works, and in principle, the same thing exists in these archives. That is, we really see all this development, we see how it all worked, who did it, what successes there were. Well, again, let's say there are still a lot of thoughts that have not yet been realized. That is, for example, I have seen a lot of superpowers that are not realized. That is, for example, to return. Once I simply saw the ability to make time go backward. That is, there is such a superpower. That is, not to return to the future, but to make time go backward, so that processes start happening in reverse. But this is still only in development, that is, it has not yet been realized. And again, it is realized only with the help of certain correct settings on the Sithin, when it really works.
Well, that is, I understood correctly that everything that everyone is currently arguing about, right? About the structure of the universe, that one says it is this way, another says no, it is that way. All this reliable knowledge, it is all precisely stored in this library.
Well, not all, but very many. Yes, indeed many. If a person there, that is, look, again, I haven't reread everything. I was more interested specifically in superpowers. If I, for example, started looking at, let's say, the history of God, that is, there is even a chapter, the history of God. That is, who communicated with him. Because many people communicated with him. Who is he? What is he? After all, this is, in the Illuminati they have no religion. That is, they have a god, as a kind of powerful energy that can realize anything. How to communicate with him, according to what protocols, according to what rules. And it is not prescribed that, some gray-haired old man is sitting somewhere on a cloud. That is, they already clearly and specifically understand. It is written with a title and plus in parentheses, God. That is what people have invented.
And look, again, yes, this God, is it not some kind of demon? Why is it God? Why can't it be some demonic entity with its own name?
Who believes in this varies. That is, for example, if there is some tribe Chumba Yumba for whom this is some kind of demon of filth, they will see it that way. You see, this is just a mask that is tied to a powerful energy, which, if asked correctly, begins to happen. That is, for example, in the same Africa, there is a drought. They start praying to their god, the same pagans, and suddenly it rains. And this is not a coincidence. How does it work? That is, no, our God is like this. In fact, God is a huge energy that can control the elements, which means if we can slightly control this element, then this absolute energy can summon any element in a second. That is, you can say, a hurricane is needed. And right out of nowhere, a hurricane can form if you know how to convey this information correctly. And in what form it is manifested is already a matter of the card. That is, for example, religion was simpler. Well, what is religion? In fact, religion is the control of people. Write a beautiful Bible, impose many prohibitions, and say, oh dear, if you try to break them, we will punish you. That is, they see miracles, and to these miracles, you can write a lot of prohibitions that people will fear, and they can be kept within certain limits. And God himself is indeed absolute energy. And absolutely, if you know how to communicate with him, if you know how to connect with him, then you become a superhuman.
So I understand correctly that the superpowers you possess were gained through interaction with the clan while training there.
Well, you see, actually, from my teacher. But again, I think he wouldn't have taught if he hadn't been allowed. I suppose the protocol was as follows. First, I talked to him, he talked to me as well. He basically took me, so to speak, under his wing. And later he simply presented my candidacy because I know that many people who knew him personally were pushing to get his attention. He simply didn't react to them, like a fly that is banging against your window, you don't let it in. So I think that all of this really came with the clan's permission, that's my feeling.
Tell me, I had an interesting question from subscribers. Why even possess superpowers? What does it give a person?
Well, you see, let me tell you how I see it for myself. Because I also asked this question at first, and Arna, smirked, and then you'll find out. Then you'll find out, right? This is the tip of the iceberg, and that is the superpower. In fact, they really don't bring any benefit at all. Well, look, for example, at telekinesis. It can be done. Well, okay, if this is psychokinesis, you can try to do it from a distance, but it's such a small thing. And simple telekinesis.
Let's clarify, please, now, so that people understand the difference between psychokinesis and telekinesis.
In my understanding, this is how I will explain it, how I feel it. In my understanding, for example, there is a ball. Here I took this ball and I counted the field. I can move it. This, as I understand it, is telekinesis. Psychokinesis is when I tune directly into your wave, I try to catch this field with your eyes and attempt to move it. But this works with very small objects. That is, if there is a desire, next time we can do the same experiment, the same light movement under some can, so that people understand that I can tune into your channel and try to transfer energy to you. Your task will not be in the degree.
You mean that you will be standing, and you will be sitting remotely?
No, not me. You will be doing this.
And I will tell you.
You will be doing this, yes. You will place your hands and I will work through your hands. This is psychotherapy.
But what if I don't know how to do anything?
And you don't need to know how to do anything. You just need to not let me into your consciousness. That's it. I will tell you what settings to make. You just let go, meaning you will feel that something is off. You will feel a slight discomfort. This is not possession. It's more informational. That is, this informational channel that works and the energy channel. I basically only need the informational one, because the movement of light telekinesis under the jar, in foil, is present in everyone. So you don't need this energy transfer. This, as I understand it, is some kind of psychokinesis. Why is this needed? Let's return to this question. Why is this needed? This is needed so that you have some kind of result. You must see this result. A person is such a being, if something is not shown to them, they will not believe it. If they only know about something but never see the result, they will stop believing in it. If a person sees the result, they immediately feel this desire of, I want more and further. And this is the trick of the egregore, to show the result, to give a result so that you delve deeper and more into me and see what else there is, that is, to dig more from it. Not the same pyrokinesis, not the same telekinesis, not the same levitation, can replace normal life things. So, for example, if I need to climb up somewhere and take something, I will naturally take a ladder. I will never levitate in the apartment. First of all, it's very dangerous. Secondly, you could enter someone else's field. That is, thirdly, that can of, I don't know, with some items. Or the same box from the wardrobe, from the attic, will cost you. It takes a lot more effort than just going to get a ladder. Therefore, this is all so that you understand that there is something much stronger, and something that doesn't have this kind of appearance. For example, the same work with energy, the same work with the field. For instance, I greet a person, and I instantly know, that is, if I go to some event, I just greet a person, and I instantly know how they are feeling. I recently had a meeting with one of my followers. I saw him for the first time in my life. And honestly, I didn't know what would happen next. That is, ideally, well, I consider myself a bit of a reserved person, especially trying not to meet with people. So I met with him, and I had to shake his hand. And in a second, I immediately saw what would happen next. That is, it was all so peaceful and friendly. And, I immediately calmed down. That is, I was still a bit anxious. I didn't know what would happen next, how it would go, who he would come with. This is a shielding field. It works with the same super abilities. Well, how to make a person shield, I'm bored with that. But if you say, you read the field, and then you also have telekinesis, he goes, oh, that's it, super, I want it. It's like this with semolina porridge. If you pour honey on it and put a cherry in, the kids will eat the semolina porridge because of that cherry. That is, well, it's roughly like that. In principle, well, it's not a deception, it's more like an addition, a light bonus. But people like it, people enjoy solving. For example, for me, all these Sith powers like telekinesis and levitation are not something, that is mind-blowing. But, for example, the same time travel or transmitting thoughts through time, that is really something cool that can truly bring great results and help you in life.
Abilities that, let's say, you do not possess, but you know they exist. For example, the call of the earth, we already mentioned that, right?
Well, you see, I actually did the call of the earth a couple of times when, for example, we had just crazy weather. I am a person who cannot stand the heat. For me, autumn is really my thing. First of all, I was born in autumn. I was born on October 7th. So for me, autumn is really my thing. The heat was just unbearable. And I, even though you shouldn't do this, I summoned the rain myself. And after 2 hours, it rained. I was so happy. I had the feeling that I was somewhere in the desert, and this rain saved me because it was just unbearable to be there. I was in an apartment that didn't have any of that. No fan, no air conditioning. I was just dying there. What I don't know, what I would like to know, I am currently engaged in. It's a journey through time, but not in a physical form, rather in a mental form. So your task is to find the exit point, the entry point, and to be able to convey thoughts. But you need to tune either yourself or that person to receive. Because these thoughts come in, some kind of images. If you're not tuned into them, you might think, well, this is nonsense. For example, roughly speaking, imagine someone telling you in 2009, Alina, go buy bitcoins. I'd be like, dude, leave me alone. Leave me alone, right? In 2009, someone tells you, what the heck? If you're tuned into them and you hear some cat saying, go buy bitcoins, then you run and spend all your money on bitcoins. And in 2024, you tell yourself, Alina, good job. I'm just clever for having heard that back then. So the ability to hear that is already a talent. It's easy to convey a thought, but hard to grasp it. And to make it settle in so that it feels like yours, that's very difficult. Because you can hear it, but you can, some kind of fantasy, Very often these fantasies that we hear somewhere, we don't understand what they are. Perhaps we are conveying something to ourselves from the future. And a return to time. For me, going back in time would be just a magical ability. I don't possess it, but I would really like to. And teleportation probably of a person. I think I would like to do that once to see how it really works, to feel it.
Do you mean to do it by yourself?
Yes, by yourself. Well, although Arnie says that you don't feel anything, that is, you just close your eyes. Your task is to do it on an exhale, and you open the keyboard and you are just there. But at the same time, the preparation is just incredible.
Well, let's go to the Sith that you possess. Let's start with levitation, because there were the most questions about it. Let's analyze the theory first, and then we'll move on to the practice of what you will demonstrate to us. What causes levitation?
Levitation occurs due to the energy of our body. Our body possesses physical energy. Our body emits a certain amount of heat. This heat can, of course, be converted, like in the movie The Matrix. That is, heat was turned into energy. But in reality, there is another type of energy that we somehow ignore. It is our inner energy, the energy of thought. In order to enhance its abilities, we tune into a different resonance. This is the resonance of mental energy. It used to be very popular. In the past, thousands of years ago, it was very popular. This is no joke. For example, the same shamans from different tribes communicated telepathically. No phones were needed, thoughts were sent. A shaman 100 kilometers away would receive it. You see, back then, such distances could not be easily overcome. On horseback, it took 5 days, or on foot, you had to walk. So they would send thoughts. But back then, they worked more with images. These were images, some kind of codes. That is, code plus image. Another shaman receives it, knows what it is, because they didn't think too much. We have overloaded ourselves with these unnecessary thoughts. If we only thought about what was necessary, believe me, all our tasks would be solved just like that, in an instant. That is, we would do everything absolutely calmly. Here, vegetation, tuning into our energy. Look, again, what is mental energy? It needs to be generated first. We always have energy, but we have learned to suppress it greatly within ourselves. For example, the same endless browsing of the internet, watching television, the same waste of energy on something negative, as I mentioned before. A person suppresses it within themselves. In order to work with Siths, with superpowers, there is also a slight difference between superpowers and Sith. In order to work with Siths, you really need to be able to generate energy. It is generated from several sources. This includes proper nutrition. Well, that's a minor detail, but it's like a slightly deflated tire in a car. It seems like a minor issue, but over time it will still affect you. So, proper nutrition and a proper daily routine must be absolutely tuned for you. Although there is an opinion, for example, Nikola Tesla slept for 2 hours, then worked for 4 hours, slept for 2 hours, and worked for 4 hours. So, in total, he had the same amount of sleep. He was connected to egregores, as we discussed recently, well, not so recently when I was still planning. This was my topic, Nikola Tesla. I analyzed him. He was connected to 3 egregores, directly connected, without interruption. And only by the age of 60 did they start to drift away from him. Therefore, such thoughts were just at that moment.
Why becoming dangerous is the connection to the egregore. Everyone is afraid of this now, like fire. Everyone is striving to exit the egregore, disconnect from the egregores, and they perform special practices for this.
Look, an egregore. Well, you should understand that it is a kind of higher organization, an organization of thoughts, an organization of energy. If you not only draw but also generate, give, you are in balance. If you draw, it draws something else from you. But the thing is, egregores live in infinity. And in this life, you don't feel the problems, but in the next one, the problems begin. That is, if you draw endlessly and give nothing in return, you must not only consume, but also produce something, add something else to it, either on an energetic level or on an informational level. But you are obliged to give, you are obliged to pay, either pay in another direction. You know, this tithe in the church is not just like that. Why did they have to give before? It's not just like that. It wasn't given for the church, but for something else. You must be able to part with energy, not just generate it. Therefore, mindless accumulation of energy or information can later really turn out very badly for you. Then it comes like, I just have bad karma. Karma, it's a karmic body, and it's just black. You look like God, how I cleaned it. That is, some troubadours, or whatever they are, who clean chimneys, right? Well, in general, you understood. In general, those who clean chimneys, if they have a karmic body like that, it's very black, the blackest.
So what needs to be generated? Look, it also happens that everyone says that if you connect to some egregore, it will drink your whole life away, roughly speaking. No, it's somewhat balanced. That is, what do you give it? Your energy.
You start to feel what you need. That is, first of all, you are obliged to generate some thoughts, and these thoughts. Let me give a simple example. For example, what we had in mind, when a person creates something and another uses it, you have no right to say, this is mine, I came up with this. That is, you see that it was your idea. And suddenly another person starts to succeed with it. But it was like a small internal egregore. This is an example. I, a person, came up with something, gave it to this egregore, launched this thought. When you create something, it's not a fact that you give it to the egregore. There is a technique for transferring to the egregore. You gather all this energy. And you give it to him through this glowing thin channel. You have already given him everything. Others can already touch this information. That's the way it is. That is, you really need to give, as if you were giving something, sending it. If you are in balance, nothing bad will happen. If you only keep giving, of course, sooner or later you will pay. Well, there should be balance in everything. Okay, let's talk a little about levitation. The next thing that is very important to us is that people really don't like it because they see all those Indians sitting in the lotus position. These are chakras. It doesn't matter what it's called. All these swadhisthānas, muladharas, these are all names. These are all details. In fact, it existed before the emergence of languages. All these Indians have, so to speak, very humanized it. In fact, it's all nonsense. You cannot know a single name of a chakra at all. Essentially, they weren't named at first because they exist in animals, they exist in stones, they exist in trees. That is, chakras are present in all. It's energy, a center through which energy flows. Animals just have fewer of them. Stones have 1 or 2, depending on the type of stone. Trees also have 2 chakras, so to speak, working with this. It's just, you know, it's like, well, I don't know, but it's like, for example, if a person doesn't work with chakras, it's the same as not brushing their teeth before bed. For some time, the teeth will be fine, but then they will just turn black. Stumps, and that's it. They will simply cease to exist. That is, my opinion is that chakras should be taught in school. That is, you know, there are different subjects like life safety, various ones, and there should be, I don't know, some kind of first energy training, like PET, so that a person understands. Because thanks to chakras you can heal yourself. At the early stages of illness, that is, while the illness hasn't yet stagnated or affected any internal organs, you can feel all of this. This also relates to levitation, and this is the main problem. People come and say, give us levitation techniques. I tell them, no, first the chakras. Yes, go with your chakras. Give us levitation. Well, you know, it's like putting a person in a Boeing and saying, that's it, fly. Here you have 1,000,000 buttons in the cockpit. Come on, fly. Well, he won't even start the engine. It all involves preparation, and only then do the techniques begin. Plus, very strong visualization. That is why I always insist that people start with telekinesis. Because telekinesis is, of course, a simplified version. It's like flying a crop duster, and only then you sit in a Boeing or the same Airbus. Telekinesis is an easy skill to work with the same visualization, the ability to project visualization, but at the same time, you won't break your energy barriers.
By the way, yes, there was a question about whether, that is, telekinesis and levitation are done based on the same principle? The same, similar.
Look, let's say, if we rate it from 1 to 10 on a 10-point scale, telekinesis is about 5 points, levitation is 10 points. Well, okay, 9 points. The beginning is the same, the base is the same, the main approaches are the same, the main postulates are the same, and then it's just a bit more development. In levitation, we work more with doubles. That is, our doubles, with which we work in telekinesis, are kind of one. You don't need much from it, you need to be able to pull it out. That is, feel the field, pull out the double, generate it, visualize it, throw it back, and work with it. In levitation, there are a few more steps, much more steps. That is why a person who comes in right away, hey, give me that. And there are also those who come in, give me teleportation, I'll master everything. Then after a year, yes, it's all nonsense. Yes, it doesn't work. Yes, guys. Well, you know, well, kind of. You always need to listen to the teacher. Whatever the teacher says to do, that's what you should listen to. And believe me, if I, let's say, had already seen levitation in this clan, let's say, after a year, I didn't even attempt it, I just watched. He asks, well, how do you like it? I say, very much. He told me, someday you will be able to do it too. That's what he said to me. Someday you will be able to do it too. That's it. I took this as a dogma. Someday I will be able to do it. I didn't say, give it to me now, please, I'm following you. No, I didn't say that. I just started to endure and wait for when I would be given it. And by the way, it took Arne about 7 to 8 years to learn levitation from his teachers. I learned in 2? No, in 3 years. I often, you know, did a bit of self-promotion, saying it was faster. Actually, from the moment I started, I had some difficulties. I was leaving and coming back. It all lasted 3.5 years for me. Again, you can't have a break here, and here you need to. You know, there is a rule that work that is not completed takes 3 times longer later. There is some kind of rule, some substitute, business laws. It's exactly the same here. You need to take it and do it without stopping every day, because these setbacks pull you back significantly. Because a person has already reached a certain level, but then fell back, and they need to restore everything again. It's you either need to start from the beginning or go all in. Well, look, Alina, for example, the same telekinesis, I teach this in my course, and there I explain how it works, that is, the main points, and I believe that this is an important point that a person should pay attention to. That is, by no means should you go and take the most expensive course, the most difficult course, and say, I can do it. Yes, you can, but after some time, because it will simply be, let's say, your energy, your nerves. You will only be angry with yourself, well, probably with me too.
Let me read the questions that my subscribers asked me. For example, about levitation. Is levitation related to balance training, or is it energy plus concentration? But, as I understood, it's neither one nor the other.
No, in fact, energy is related. Levitation is related to balance. Why? Because this is also explained in my course, when we do levitation, we must first be able to create our energy double, and then be able to create a certain base for it, under its feet, on which it stands. And, at the same time, if you can balance correctly, that is the slack line, feeling it well, you can do it easily. If you are not well balanced in the physical world, if you cannot properly balance your body, you cannot immediately trust it to the double, the energy double. Why is it necessary to be able to balance it yourself? It's not a wizard, not an old man Katabich, who will just take it and do everything. No. You are the wizard. The one who shapes a person is the wizard of their own body. First, physical training. Moreover, let's say, balance is not the last, well, not the only preparation. In my courses, for example, I always make them do physical exercises, the same push-ups, squats and abs. This is a must-have that the person must have. They cannot skip this. That is an obligation.
Listen, is the double somehow related to the etheric body or the astral body? Is it something from that?
It is from that opera, but it's a little different. It is specifically an energetic creation. Look, the same etheric body always exists. And the double is precisely a temporary creation of your double that you work on yourself. Because the etheric body is always present on the body. The astral etheric body is one of our 7 subtle bodies, or maybe not even 7, there are more, I think 13 subtle bodies. There are the main immortal bodies and mortal bodies. These first 3 subtle bodies are considered mortal bodies. They die, and you are born with them. This is similar to the etheric body. But, if, for example, a person starts to develop only the etheric body, that's not it. Look, in the technique of esotericism, you always need to know the general theory. It's like a theory that you must know, so that you understand what it all is based on. Because if you have never heard about the etheric body at all, and someone tells you to create a double, how does it even work? What is it? A person should already be a little prepared. For this, there are certain preparatory courses that I also recommend people take with me, because without them, a person, ends up in an informational pit. It seems like they already demand this information from you, but where to get it is unclear. What stresses me even more is that there is an abundance of this information on the internet, but each source describes it completely differently. And when you start reading online, this growth can drive you crazy. Each author considers themselves a mega guru, and each describes it differently. One has a mortal etheric body, another has an immortal one, and a third says it comes at 13 years old. These are the kinds of things that unfortunately, they should be hit in the mouth for this. This is all a very strong distortion, in fact. By the way, you asked what they do in this regard. In this regard, I really learned for the first time how all these subtle bodies work, what they are for, how they are structured, at what age they appear. For example, when a child is born, they do not have all the chakras. And you must understand what rights you have to set protections for them. That is, what are all these red threads for? They are very important for the child, because with age, you already have a strong connection with the absolutes. You can already protect yourself. The child does not have that. Any sideways glance at a child can lead to such problems. Therefore, these things need to be. Such things are described in such treatises.
Listen, how is that possible? This is a child. This is in fact a manifested particle of the Creator. How does he not have a connection?
There is a connection, but no protection. And what about the cocoon? The cocoon is so soft that it can be penetrated very easily. That is, look, for example, roughly speaking, why, for example, look, especially all the stars do this? Now, at least when they started to learn some information, they do not post photos of their children, meaning they cover their eyes. Through the child's eyes, it is elementary to penetrate into their subtle etheric body, and then work through it on the physical body. I always recommend that small children wear black glasses. If it's summer, it works well, and no one can look into their eyes, as it penetrates very deeply through the eyes. Why? Because these energy vampires are the ones who do this. It is difficult to hook an ordinary person into this. They must be somewhat led into it. And with a child, when they start to smile, they begin to let you in, or even start to feel fear. It doesn't matter. If they smile, it means they are opening their 4th chakra. If they are afraid, it means they are opening their 1st chakra. And these moments are something people are very good at using. Especially all these photographs. That's why I am not an advocate of all photographs of children. I believe it is a very dangerous thing. This person should know and should avoid it.
Is levitation somehow related to the transfer of weight from one's body?
By reducing weight, you could say that.
Reduce weight.
Yes, you can. The mass remains, the weight changes a little. Well, basically, like in space, that is, some cosmic laws work like that. But this weight transfers to the subtle body. That is, your subtle body begins to acquire this. They took this weight from you and your physical body. If people follow my videos, in one video I stood on the scales, did a visualization where the needle just went down. These were mechanical scales, so nothing could be done there. True, the quality of course let me down a bit, but nevertheless, you can see that the needle just dropped. And the scales are such that they are 100 years old, where no electronics can be fitted.
How energy-consuming is levitation?
Unfortunately, it's costly. That's why I say that if you take a jar of cucumbers from the attic, it's better to use a ladder. Let's say the meditation lasts about an hour before starting, and the recovery takes another 2 to 3 hours. This is for light levitation. If you want, for example, among people like some do, there is a strong emphasis on both meditation and protection. That is, you must be able not only to gather energy for levitation, but also to create protection. Because this is a moment where, if it doesn't work, you will fall. So the person is already ready to fall. But again, you balance yourself a bit forward. Imagine, you're standing on some board and it slips from under your feet, you just fall down. Falling from 2 meters can also cause injury. That's why I don't recommend it. I generally believe that in my courses, I always prohibit doing levitation in the presence of people.
An interesting question arises when considering the scenario involving two individuals. I recently observed on your channel a fascinating video showcasing one of your students who possesses the remarkable ability to levitate with an impressive grace and elegance.
Why does this happen? It is energy consuming. Explain why? He consults me about this. In fact, these are his close people next to him. They are not completely random people. He is attuned to them. If they are your close ones, to whose field you are attuned, with whom you are in harmony, again, this is done with a certain calculation of whether you are compatible with these people in terms of energy, communication, and so on. This person does just that. He calculates everything, very easy for him to do so. Then it is possible. If they were completely unfamiliar people as far as I know, he once did it in a park, also among people, but it was a very low, small levitation, literally a couple of centimeters, but it is dangerous. Look, here's the thing. You must attune to, your body tunes into the doppelganger, and your doppelganger hovers. If at that moment some other person enters this field, and they have what is called a transcendental chakra. Transcendence is when your chakra reaches, for example, such a level. And you enter that field, he can just disrupt everything. That is, there can be complete interference and that's it. In fact, for a person, if they have no anomalies or superpowers, their field is about this size. That is, approximately 2 to 3 centimeters. Transcendence is when the chakra begins to expand. That is, at that moment such a phenomenon appears. And people, experience charisma, the same as various leaders. At the moment of conversation, their 5th chakra is working. By the way, for those interested, I explain in my courses what the 5th chakra is, like colors and charisma. That is, this is a way to transcendence. If a person enters his field at that moment of transcendence, he can disrupt his entire program. And the person may just collapse. Well, collapse. Break an arm or a leg. That's already on him. Well, again, I always warn everyone not to do this, not to engage in such practices.
Well, I understand. So this guy has close people around him, which is why they are suitable for him to be able to do that. Okay, well, for example, can you at least demonstrate levitation next time you're near me? Because I thought you would be recovering for 2-3 months, not 2-3 hours.
No. Look, Alina, the situation is like this. For example, Dynamo once demonstrated levitation in Brazil, near the statue of Jesus, on the mountain, and he was flying among the people. I later found out in the clan how he did it. When I watched it for the first time, I can always determine whether it's a trick or real when I watch Superpowers, because you can immediately see. If you close your eyes, you can see through the field. If the field starts to sparkle, like for example, Venus sparkles at night, meaning it shimmers with colors, then you really have some superpowers happening. He did that, and I was always curious, how does he end up among people? They were all extras. They were extras, they were his hired people, so at least around him. Did you see that performance or not, where he lifted off? No, he stands, raises his hands, and flies up, literally a couple of meters, and for me, it was like, how is this even possible? Turns out, I later found out, they were his people. When you tune in, for example, if I tune in with you for 1 hour, then I will know. It's dangerous. If I see that you are not dangerous to me in terms of energy field, I can do it. But these unexpected encounters, for example, someone walks by and you are levitating, you could fall. That is already dangerous.
Well, remotely like this, if we are at your place, but
Remotely? No. Remotely is absolutely fine. Absolutely. That is, it does not affect anything. Remotely? You see, I was talking about psychokinesis. If you're interested, we can try to do a light one next time. On your side is telekinesis, on my side is psychotherapy, so that I can make the object move under your hands. Well, I think it will work. So what about levitation? Look, I will try to do levitation on my own. Actually, I will just explain what it is. Levitation should ideally be done in an open space. So why? Because in the apartment where I live, I have ceilings of 240. These are very low ceilings. Your brain holds you back. That is, it does not allow you to lift off. My student Alex demonstrated levitation in the apartment.
Hello, my name is Boss. I recently received a video from YouTube where some person with a page called Pirate Magic teaches levitation in my name. I don't know how he will teach people to levitate without a key to their identity. For me, this is a big mystery.
But he didn't mention one thing. He lives in an old apartment with 4-meter ceilings. It is possible to do it there. That is, he lives in a Stalin-era building. You know, huge ceilings like that. By the way, I love such apartments. Huge ceilings. When you have space, your consciousness doesn't set you boundaries. That is, you still see that there is space when your consciousness has even the slightest block. Everything stops working for you. This is the main problem. You should have no blocks, no doubts, no obstacles. That is, the slightest doubt that something won't work, the slightest doubt that you might get stuck somewhere, everything falls apart. That is, here you should have, a completely clear road, without any possible.
well, I think we can organize an outdoor shoot for you. So, friends, if you want Ernst to demonstrate levitation, please write in the comments. I want to return to what a person feels when they levitate. You have thoughts, you have emotions. Can they potentially exist?
By the way, that's a very good question. Why? Because these emotions are the main culprit. They are like the Colorado potato beetle that ruins everything. Emotions must be completely turned off. That is, no emotions, no thoughts. Under no circumstances should you go to low vibrations. That is, for example, if someone did something bad to you, like playing a trick on you, you hold a grudge against them. And if you constantly think about it, no superpowers will manifest. That's the first point. So, emotions completely. Secondly, it's still a very important point to connect with. I always work through the 4th chakra, meaning for me the 4th chakra is the chakra of light and goodness, which cannot in principle carry negative emotions if you work through it. It's better not to talk. But when you have been working for more than a couple of years, you can, in principle, speak. However, you need to speak without images, because your entire image, all your visual thinking is tuned to the doppelganger. What do you feel? You feel like you're in a diving suit that is 2 sizes smaller than what you need. That is, the doppelganger wraps around you so tightly that you just feel a bit uncomfortable. If you have properly tuned into visualization, so here, well, again, I explain this in detail in the courses, we don't immediately approach this breakthrough. The first thing is to work with the doppelganger. Then how you should feel it. How you should, that is, you can lean in, you can rest against it, so that you understand how to work with it. And further on, this is not a quick process. Unfortunately, this is not a quick process, so for those who need quick breakthroughs, I recommend getting a plane ticket and flying. It's faster. And for those who are truly interested in working with their body, then prepare for long-term results. But they will come, and they will shock you because you will feel every time, even before the absolute result, the progress you are making. And plus, Alina, it's not just about levitation itself, but when you work directly with chakras, when you do visualization, you can apply it everywhere. It's like a boxer's strong hands. He doesn't just box in the ring, he can use them in everyday life. It's exactly the same here, when you have the right visualizations working and something happens in your life. You can direct this visualization to eliminate a particular problem, and it works just like Swiss watches. So, just for people to understand, it's not just about this Sith. When I said that, it's exactly this.
You are at least mentally healthy for this, emotionally healthy, your physical body is healthy, am I right? That's how all the chakras work.
Yes. Plus, you can always feel some kind of attachment on yourself. For example, I often feel negative entities on myself that I can instantly remove. Esotericism is the moment when you can feel yourself completely. You can look at yourself, You can step outside yourself, you can feel, you can help other people. Well, I think these are very big bonuses. You know, you just asked me, you brought me to this question. If I hadn't seen these superpowers, would I have gone down this path? Probably not. Probably, if I hadn't seen all these superpowers, I would have stopped at some point too. So, most likely, they are necessary. They are necessary because you are kind of moving towards them, and at the same time, what you are already earning becomes, a very big support for this matter.
Well, it seems to me that superpowers, even the Sith, yes, let's say, that we see levitation and so on, are motivating. But what actually opens up when you can master your own energy, when you see, feel, understand what is happening, and can influence yourself, others, and events, well, it cannot be compared to anything at all. Therefore, I don't have such a question at all. Why is this needed? Why? I see a truly huge value in this, without a doubt.
There's also a small point here. For example, people who come to me for the same course, for instance, desire manifestation, are a little, let's say, afraid to use it. They believe that this is, something from the devil. That is, that you are somehow making a deal with the devil. No. Everything I teach is absolute energy. It is pure energy. It is the energy that everyone has, and we teach how to transform it. This is the main point. That is, this can be done constantly. Don't be afraid that, the charge will run out someday. No, on the contrary, absolute energy loves it when you use it. It really doesn't like it when it is near you and you don't touch it. It starts to stagnate. Therefore, this is something that every person needs to know. Honestly, if I were some kind of minister of education, I would introduce at least some basic knowledge about chakras in schools, and I assure you that students would learn much better, because the ability to, let's say, tune into the 7 chakras, well, right. I just remember when I was still in school, we would do exercises before starting. We were taken out into the cold air and we would jump there, waving our arms for 10 minutes. It was great. If after that we were also seated and made to do 5 minutes of light meditation, going through all the chakras, I assure you, the information delivery would have been much more effective.
You said that you use the energy of the 4th chakra. I didn't quite understand here. Do you levitate using the energy of the 4th chakra?
Or did I hear it wrong? Let's say, look, the 4th chakra is specifically for releasing energy. It is specifically for initiating a certain kind of Sith. That is, first we create this energy within ourselves, and then we must be able to launch it. So our Yu chakra is our entrance and our exit, our doors through which we either let energy in or release it outward. Therefore, our 4th chakra is specifically the outlet for the energy that you know how to launch. Imagine that it is a kind of filter, and there is a light shining inside you. If it passes through this filter, it will have this or that glow. For example, the 4th chakra has a green glow. Green, in principle, is the chakra of Dodra. This does not depend on the person. Rather, the person cannot adjust it for themselves. It is only as he has a predisposition. That is why a key to personality is needed, so that he understands through which chakra things work. For example, a person says, I work here. The strongest is, of course, the absolute chakra, the 7th chakra. But suppose it is not strong for him. For instance, his 1st chakra is strong. And he never knows about this, for example, and he tries to launch all his visualizations through the upper chakras, but it does not work. To begin with, a person needs to analyze their chakra key so that they understand what is strong and what is weak. For example, when I demonstrate telekinesis, I always work through the 4th chakra. At least for the last 5 to 6 years, I have been working through it. There are people who work, for example, through the 6th chakra. These are the ones who are more intuitive. By the way, I noticed that for them, intuitive telekinesis also goes through fits and starts because it happens, let's say, not purposefully, but in jumps, Sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't. Well, everyone has their own way.
Well, as I see it, levitation is done through the 1st chakras, isn't it?
No. Levitation still requires you to, you must first know your key, and then you connect it with the Sith key. That is, for this, a specific tuning is done. You connect to the Sith key. Everyone has their own way. So you must always understand that for everyone, levitation works differently. The principle is the same, but the fine-tuning is different for each person. You cannot make a person work through the 1st chakra if it is positioned at the end in the chakra key. So that is unrealistic.
And what about teleportation? In general, teleportation for me, I heard that my friend saw it with her own eyes. I still can't imagine it. It's true that a person can do this, I believe. But what does a person feel? How does it happen? What is it that makes this work?
Look, I'm telling you based on the words of my teacher's witnesses, they feel nothing, absolutely nothing. That is, it is an instant transition. He must be able to create using the strongest, most powerful visualization. Plus, it is very important where you are. That is, you need to choose, to be able to choose places. If you get into some negative vortex, that is, into a vortex that drains energy, you must not do that under any circumstances. You can end up as a mentally ill person. That is, some of your subtle bodies, especially the astral ones, can remain in that place or get damaged. You create an exit point, an entry point. You must connect this point with the space. But it is very difficult. That is essentially like a non-feeler. He feels nothing. That is, I just closed my eyes and took a breath. I mentally entered this portal and mentally exited through that glowing point. That's it. That's all I felt. I found myself there.
The distance is not important in this case.
Distance is important. You must see the point you want to reach. Look, telekinesis is important. You must hold the object in your hands. Revitalization matters. Spend time there. If you are already there, you have already spent time in it. Ideally, always touch the ground. You need to be able to feel the vibration of the earth. You need to be able to hold onto some nearby buildings or the same trees. During teleportation, you must see where you are. That is, going to a point you don't know is probably impossible.
No, okay, but if I know the point, like let's say there, I don't know, but I don't.
No, you must see it physically. It is within your line of sight. It's not like what they show in movies. It's not like you just flip and you're already somewhere, I don't know, on a brow. You saw it there. It's all fairy tales. It's all movies. Therefore, I believe that, well, let's say, look, if a person sets a goal for teleportation, ideally, they will reach it. For 3 to 4 years, they will only be working on it from all sides, but I think they will break through this wall.
What if not teleporting oneself, but teleporting an object?
You also need to know the final point from where it will come out, so it's easier with an object.
Not just to know, but to see it right now?
Yes, to see. That is, you must see this point. You must see the entry point where the object is. You must see the exit point. So, essentially, to be honest, I am an honest person, so I will say this is nonsense. In itself, it is nonsense. Because no matter what, but again, the amount of effort you put into it and how much energy you earn in parallel is incomparable to anything. That is, later you can perform such miracles like the materialization of objects. Some people can do it if they take it and can materialize. The most basic elements, sand, water, even that, well, it's not entirely about quantity. To materialize from energy, that is, he can take energy from the cosmos, channel it, and materialize it, but that's already advanced skill. By the way, this is something I also do not possess. So, my materialization is at a very basic level, and I once demonstrated it with water, but after that, I experienced such a loss of energy that I said, guys, I don't want to end up disabled, so I want to do what comes easily to me and what makes me feel good. Because, you know, a person can work anywhere, but they should feel comfortable. For me, for example, materializing water was uncomfortable. I demonstrated it a long time ago, and it was uncomfortable. If you connect with the center halfway, although I also don't really like this warm energy because it burns your hands, it's unpleasant. You feel like you start to sweat, and you have to be able to release heat through your hands. After that, your hands hurt, especially here, in the elbow joints. You walk around as if you've lifted a heavy weight.
You pass fire through, I say. It ignites from your hand.
Heat, heat. You pass the fire. Heat. It is this heat that you must transfer with such power to the object so that it is remembered. Well, if people are interested, I will show this in the next video. That is, I will demonstrate how it works.
Yes. Write what is more interesting. Levitation, pyrokinesis, what else? Write in the comments. Okay, and telekinesis. I understand that for you, telekinesis is just not energy consuming at all.
Let's say telekinesis. With the objects I know is not energy consuming. With new objects that I don't know, it is energy consuming because you need to tune in first. You need to spend a long time tuning into the double.
Long. How long is that?
Well, about a couple of hours. A couple of hours, that is, it's not just to take it and hold it. These are my objects that I, for example, keep here. By the way, they are on my table. If, for example, you have your objects that you are already tuned to, with which you already work well with the double, then yes. If these are completely new objects, well, you need a couple of hours to, let's say, connect with them. It's not that quick.
And if, as you say, psychokinesis, right, that if the objects are from my side, I touched it, this. So do you also need to tune in for several hours? Or is it faster through me?
If psychokinesis, it always works on light energy impulses. That is, as a rule, it's some very light thing. It's some kind of spinner. It's some kind of just something so that you can transmit light.
Well, it won't work there.
No, never in life. With such distances, you know when it will work. If, for example, you complete this course and learn it well. And if you can't do it, then I can do it with you. But you need to know absolutely all these practices. But if you just place your hands on something, and I connect through the info channel and transmit, this can be done with a light object. Well, by the way, if you're interested, let's do this in the next broadcast live without preparations, so it won't be. Therefore, it will be interesting for people, because if we sit down and prepare in advance, by the way, I will show how I prepare. It's quite a quick process.
Listen, I'm curious. Can people at the top, for example, of your clan, teleport somewhere very far? Or like this, easily lift any objects from a distance? I know that pyrokinesis can definitely ignite a building or something from a distance without being there at all.
Well, what I asked Arne whether it's possible to teleport, he told me that you need to at least have been to that place. That is, for example, if you have never been there, if you have never left your informational trace there, then no. At least if you have been there often, it is easy for you to teleport there. But, again, how much? This, saying it and doing it are different things. For example, I haven't seen it, so I won't lie that it's possible. His teleportation was about, I think, 100, somewhere around 100, 200 meters. I can't assess it exactly right now because it was, let's say, in such a terrain where it was not particularly possible to see the distance, but I understand that it was around 100, 200 meters. I can't speak about those at the top of the clan. What I asked Arne, his Sith, he says that I have very strong Sith. Well, he was talking about himself. I'm not sure that those at the top are even engaged in this right now. It seems to me that they have more of a mental setup rather than demonstrative. Got it. Set the building on fire. Okay, just watch. In fact, Pyrokinesis doesn't set fire and doesn't ignite nitragnets. Sorry for the pun. That is, you won't ignite the stone. You need to ignite something that burns. You can light the curtain, you can light something that can catch fire properly with a match. That is wood. And that wood too, I once did it in nature. Well, honestly, I arrived there at 6 in the morning. And only around noon did I really manage to get the wood to catch fire. Because there was such a setup, well, that is, wood doesn't just burn like that. You need to be just as fatty. Yes. Well, first of all, it has juice in it, so it doesn't really burn. So I had to, right there, with a magnifying glass, I dried out the bark so that it would catch fire. Because it was just like that. It should be an easily flammable item. If it's not like that, then it's difficult, but these are all demonstrative networks. Personally, I believe that for a person it's enough to master telekinesis of levitation. If he has mastered these two networks, everything else, he knows that it works. That is, in his mind, there are no barriers anymore. The hardest part is breaking the barrier. As soon as he even starts a slight rotation, you won't believe it, my students write. We started to achieve other situations in life, and this and that. That is, after a slight rotation, the moment. They are climbing to some peak, and they just reached a small one. I'm not talking about the peak of Everest, I'm talking about a minor one. They stood there, and something started to work for them. That's it. And I already know that from there they are going along the beaten path because they already know that it is possible. That is, the first snowball is the hardest to move, but from there it gets easier.
Well, yes, their mind already understands that, look, I just did this, there's no turning back.
This is the hardest part. To make your consciousness say that it is possible, because doubts absolutely kill everything and push you back in this matter because a person, well, they are afraid. A person thinks, I'm deceiving myself. And as long as a person has doubts, they can't achieve anything. That is, this self-suggestion is probably the most important thing, so that he simply believes. Therefore, I recommend starting with small children, while they still don't know that it's impossible, before they are told in physics textbooks that it's impossible. Because as soon as they are told, they will say, well, that's impossible. And as soon as they say it's impossible, it becomes impossible. Everything that is in the program is possible. Yes, it is possible. Everything that is impossible, well, you will say yourself that it is impossible.
I agree. But let's return to what hinders acquiring these abilities, developing these abilities, a bit later. For now, I suggest we move on to the demonstration of what you proposed.
All right. Then I will now demonstrate what I have prepared for you. In fact, these are my items that I have been familiar with for a long time. This is an ordinary glass jar. Why glass? I think everyone understands, so there are no questions about whether there are magnets or not. I believe it's clear with glass. There are no magnets. And I think everyone understands that there is absolutely nothing near this jar. A light push. I think anyone can do this, focusing on the ball. Naturally, I have already held it beforehand, so it's probably easier for me. If a person doesn't know, they should do this. Why do I use my hands? It's easier for our brain to work with hands. Of course, telekinesis is possible without hands, but it's more difficult, so. A light push without any attachment. What I would like to show, which is probably more important, because all these telekinesis things, it's cool, everything flies, everything walks, moves, but what is it all based on? It all is based on the first move, which is the ability to read in the field. I will show you a simple object. For example, we take a simple bone. The bone is different from all sides. I will show you. I will show Alina. Here, I am now, trying a little to show how I would read this bone. For this, I need to touch the object, at least to align it with the wall so that the bone touches. If I set it aside, the bone will touch the wall. I will now try to read the position. I will be reading the position of the upper bone. For this, I make a field capture and then visualize it. As you can see, they are solid from all sides. Unit.
What is that shining on your box?
Oh, I just covered the brand. You know, you can't fix brands. It's some kind of branded box.
You have cut-out glasses there.
No, I just covered it. I just covered the brand. You know, they say you can't with brands. I lived in America for a long time, and here you generally need to cover everything with brands. That is...
Yes, I see. Can you shake it well with your hands? I don't know. And then put it back in the box. And then yes.
I just need to move it to the side, that is, it should touch. First, I just create an image of this cube. So first, there is just an image. Then I start to draw certain points on it. These points come from imagination, but then they begin to acquire some informational meaning. I see 6 points on top. If people are interested, I can just sit down, leave the camera for a long time so that people can see that I am doing this and get focused. The simplest thing is, of course, something like this. That is, you have much more energy in your hands than without, and it's much easier to push with your hand. Well, as you can see, there is basically nothing here. Well, if you're interested, I can do, let's say, a quick shoot. Well, half an hour is a light meditation. It's easy. Can you imagine what light meditation is and what complex meditation is? That is, for levitation, I need to prepare for at least 2 hours. That's the minimum preparation. It's really like, you know, you sit for a long time and you meditate. You sit, and meditate. But if you're interested, I can really show how I do it. Let's do it this way. We'll even do a challenge. If you get 1,000 comments, we'll do it both with hands and without hands. Let's not raise the bar right away. Let people not have anything to look at. We'll raise the bar gradually like a little oak. But in any case, look what you just saw. I'll briefly tell you this is telekinesis. This is toys. But this was much more important. Can you imagine? You need to try to count something, try to guess something, try to predict. This is much more important. Although people think this is nonsense. But this is already very important. On the contrary, yes, it seems more impressive because it shows that it moves without your touch.
It is more impressive, yes. But in fact, I agree that to gather information about a person or an event, of course, gathering is very important. How to start training such abilities? Where do you even begin? What do you start with in your school, in your course?
In my course, I always recommend starting with the right meditation techniques. Moreover, many people know about meditation, that it involves breathing. They say deep breathing is meditation. No. You must be able to tune in properly to your body. You need to be able to feel it. Secondly, what I highly recommend in my courses is chakras. The ability to understand what they are, to feel them, to work with them. Next, you can skip one course and go directly to the telekinesis course. Or you can take a good approach that will later reward you with capital. This is the Desire Launch course. It is a very good course that I recommend. You see, it is universal. It basically applies to everything. That is telekinesis. Family problems are solved. Work problems are solved. Health issues are resolved. It's like a universal key that can open anything. But you will have to work a little for it. That is, you need to prepare for it. You need to tune into it. But if a person, you see, it's very, very bad when a person comes and says, I want to be able to do everything already yesterday. This is not for us, not for our courses. Our courses do not offer that. If a person is ready to train, strive, to be disciplined and be patient, then welcome. Otherwise, this is not for us. There are surely some satanic techniques. There is some black magic that will help you soar instantly. But once you soar, you will be sick for the rest of your life because the devil takes a very big toll for this. Therefore, you need to understand that either you work with pure energy or you work with dark energy. It works faster, but faster doesn't always mean better, so the choice is yours.
What blocks these abilities the most? That is, as I have already understood, some improper food. Is there any food that definitely should not be eaten to have these abilities?
Well, there is no specific food that cannot be eaten. There is a combination of foods that should not be eaten. Certain products are better not to mix. But again, I will speak from my experience. For example, I practiced telekinesis today while eating improperly. I demonstrated it. This is with neutral nutrition. Levitation probably wouldn't work right now. That is, neutral nutrition is mixed nutrition. It is still important to separate. It is advisable not to mix flour products and meat products.
I don't remember.
A couple of main things. That is, what is not digested by one substance in the stomach. For one, more alkaline is needed. For the other, more acidic. And, together they kind of neutralize each other. Alcohol definitely needs to be digested. Well, how? Look, during training, yes, I won't lie. For example, right now, when I meet, I am not the kind of person who is, already. It should be according to the letter of the law as I was told. If necessary, I can, for example, sip a little wine with friends once a month. But just a little. That is, I know that this is not. And those people who drink it every day, of course, they shouldn't. That is, nothing will help them.
But while training, it's better not to do this, right?
While training, it's better not to do this because the results will be extremely slow, it will be a turtle pace, and a person will simply drop out. Smoking. 2. But, recently one person wrote to me who smokes something other than tobacco. He says, I have great thoughts. In fact, this is also desirable. Generally, during training, it is advisable not to take anything unnatural. So if you want results, drink water. If you drink water, there will be results. It's such a simple rule.
Okay. There are some setups in our heads, some programs, blocks. Should a person have some level of spiritual practice or mental preparation? I don't know. Visits to a psychologist in therapy? Or can one start from any level?
No, you can start from absolutely any level, but what should a person do with self-suggestion? They should be able to extinguish these blocks within themselves, blocks of disbelief, like, it won't work, it's all nonsense. That is, they should be able to set themselves up for, mental silence. When I work, I don't think about anything. There is a technique in Tibet where you just go and do one task after another, not thinking about how much is left, not thinking about what steps are ahead. Here you are working directly on this step, but when a person realizes that there is still a lot left, it also throws them off. That is, you shouldn't look far ahead. You need to look down at your feet and do what you need to do right now. Doubts? Doubts are a very big obstacle to developing any ability. That is, a person must force themselves to believe that it is possible. Probably for this, they just need to watch a lot of superpowers on television and the internet. As soon as they hear that it is possible, their brain says, aha, it is possible, let's work. And if everyone keeps telling him that it is impossible, it is impossible. That is why I recommend to those who live in a family, especially those who engage in such activities, and everyone tells them that it is nonsense, not to show what they are doing. That is, you quietly engage in it, and that's it. And do not bring it out for public scrutiny.
Listen, well, such a topic that many people are currently concerned about is various childhood traumas, some scenarios or programs, and how this can affect a person's life. Will this somehow influence super abilities? Or on the contrary, as it seems to me, when you start working on them, you will eliminate these traumas through working with your chakras and so on, energy. Could that be possible?
If the trauma did not enter the energetic level, that is, if during the trauma, well, it can be any trauma, yes, serious ones. If your chakra was not injured, it means that the chakra is simply stopped, it just doesn't work. This is precisely a sign of childhood trauma. Then everything is fine. Then it recovers. That is, if it didn't go too deeply. But ideally, of course, if a person has some serious childhood traumas, it's better to see a psychologist. Or work on self-restoration through chakras. But at the same time, he must understand that his main task is not this, but rather self-restoration, self-generation, or regeneration of his energy, which will, in principle, help him in the future. That is, all of this will be a bonus. The main thing he needs, so to speak, is to become stable. This helps. At least it definitely doesn't hinder. That is, all these techniques do not hinder. They will not make things worse in any case.
Well, what I mean is that there are some, I don't know, standard blocks. We all have them. There are ordinary blocks in the chakras, some impurities. Everyone calls it differently. Not when you have transcendental chakras, as you say. Yes, each extends a meter from each side of the body, but everyone lives with one. There, the second is somewhat blocked, for someone the fifth, and so on. Can you work with such ones? Will it not significantly hinder the development of these abilities?
It will, but that's exactly why I have a short course. That comes with the main course. It teaches how to make adjustments, how to correct the work of the chakras, and this can be corrected directly, but very quickly. That is, everything is fixable. It is unfixable when a person is convinced that it is unfixable. That is, when he, for example, starts to follow the teacher's words and do what he is told, then everything works. I have very rarely encountered a person whose chakras are so blocked that they cannot be fixed. Chakras are like the spine. If you, for example, lift heavy boxes every day, naturally, you will have and intervertebral hernias and vertebrae misalignment. If you go to the right masseur, if you go to the right chiropractor, everything goes back into place. That is, we are engaged in chiropractic work on chakras.
Well, yes. And the psyche is also connected to the chakras. And everything that hinders quickly leaves the head.
A lot, yes.
Listen, there was a question like that, which was also asked of me. Can there be any legal problems when a person starts to gain such abilities? The same levitation, like your students levitating on the embankments, or something like that.
Well, let's say there are unlikely to be any direct legal problems, but recruitment might. So, you mean, are you saying that there are some clans? No, clans do not recruit. Clans extend invitations to you. You are recruited by the state. You know, the state doesn't pay very well. In fact, maybe it pays well, but there are such requirements. That is, if you start working for them, you become unable to leave, and you have millions of different subscriptions. And you? No. Especially getting involved with special services, you will lose more than you gain. Because that's where a not very good story begins. So, I recommend not to expose this matter. That is, a person works for themselves. And he shouldn't expose it because essentially, it's your enlightenment. You are not shining for someone else. You are not becoming a lantern for others. You are becoming a lantern for yourself. This enlightenment should be for you. But actually, yes, recruitment may start happening. This especially concerns not even telekinesis, but things like thought implantation, telepathy, thought shielding. That is, what is really important. And telekinesis, well, who needs it, you know? You have never in your life accelerated an object to the speed of a bullet. Never in your life. It's unrealistic. That is, any gun, the same Nagant, will shoot much stronger than some stone with telekinesis. So, no to those things. But when they start delving into your history, and they read your stories, many read them, when they notice something, they say, wow, this person might be useful to us, let's hand him over to us. And, by then, you won't be able to escape from there.
But can one refuse in general?
You can refuse, but if you agree, then it's better. I was invited a couple of times. I worked as a sort of, well, how to say, freelancer. But then they told me, how about you work with us permanently? And I said, what does that entail? Well, since I had certain protections on one side, but on the other side, you have so many restrictions. Restrictions. You can't do this, you can't do that, you can't travel, and there you can't go. And wow, you have to be constantly available. You have to be right there. Almost 24/7, and at any moment you have to be ready with a go bag. They can come at night, take you away. So this is not good. At least for such people, by the way, sleep. This 24/7 schedule and sleep are incompatible. You need to sleep well. The daily routine must be followed constantly. A person who goes to bed at 2 to 3 a.m. once can lose all their super abilities and have to develop them from scratch.
Tell me, where should I start? How can I learn from you? And is it possible, for example, well, I already basically answered this question, you answered this question. Can one study in several courses at once, or should it be done step by step? Where is it better to start in your school? Tell me about it.
Ideally, my school has created courses that go step by step. That is, stage. Of course, a person can purchase all the courses at once, but they will just sit and gather dust. In fact, ideally, they first work on their own energy. Then, when he has learned to work with it, he works with the power of thought, and then he starts to move on to techniques. Therefore, here is my good advice. The courses on developing super abilities are strong. The courses on working with visualization are very strong. Chakras, meditation are what the first stage is about. Without them, you can't go anywhere. Then the techniques themselves begin. The same telekinesis, psychokinesis, meditation. Teleportation is like a bonus that people take on after achieving certain results. Therefore, I would recommend these courses.
Is it possible to know, for example, if there are people who definitely won't succeed?
Absolutely, of course. And, let's say, look at who definitely cannot succeed. I always look through a very correct lens. That is, I always look at the subtle field. If a person has a very weak subtle field, it's not that they won't succeed, but it will take a very long time, meaning it will last for years. Moreover, it will last for years. I'm not talking about the result of telekinesis. I think the same applies to the manifestation of desires. For example, there are people who cannot visualize anything. For them, visualization is an absolute dark forest. They cannot imagine anything. If a person cannot imagine anything, that is, this is the fantasy that transitions into the world of reality. Then of course, well again, I even have a course for the development of visualization specifically, but there are, such critical moments that, let's say, do not exist. If I see that a person is not capable of this, I will say no. But again, I am not going to clip anyone's wings. If I see that a person has at least some inclinations, then of course welcome. If I see that a person is not ready at all, then no.
Yes, but it seems to me that those who cannot visualize anything at all are just a few. This is an elementary test. Close your eyes. Imagine an apple. If you can see it, in your mind in any way, then you already have developed imagination, and you will succeed in everything else.
A person from America came to me who said that I cannot visualize anything. I only describe everything in words. But again, I will say that there are very few people who cannot achieve anything at all. Mostly, these are people who have potential because people who cannot achieve anything are usually very sick individuals. They can already see it in their health. That is, this chakra system has completely stopped and everything has already affected the physical body. Such people, in principle, do not even come.
To those whom Ernst has resonated with, who have always dreamed of finding a true teacher, one who will teach you something similar without dark magic or satanic connections, here is this person. All links will be in the description. Please, if you are interested in more videos with Ernst, write in the comments. Thank you.
Alina, a big compliment. I was incredibly pleased to talk to you today. You have very pure, very positive energy. While we were communicating, I really absorbed this energy. I was nourished by it, so thank you. I hope you didn't feel that you lost anything, because when we give, we simultaneously gain. Thank you for your time, for this wonderful interview. I hope that people will gain experience from Ernst and Alina.